Hello guys, Lit here. So the patch note is out, and one setup that still survives is Cyclone. The kinetic fusilade is getting nerfed, the elemental hit is also getting nerfed, so I basically dropped that two setup. You probably still can do them, they are pretty strong skill, but I think we can just go with Cyclone. I listed this at 3.28, so I have all the guide for Act 1 to Act 10, there's a guide for that, and I also have guide for the crafting, how you craft your item early on, and even on the endgame versions. So all the resources is there, and I will put all the link in the descriptions. So in this video, we will go through the updated version of the Cyclone. So let's begin with the day 1 versions. So this is the day 1 versions. This is a bare bone item that we're going to get. A lot of this item is 2 to 3 mod items with crafted mod. So example like the weapon here, we're just using the essence to get the flatfish, and then we're looking for critical strike chance, and then we craft the percentage fish. The reason why some of this is fracture is because I want to remove basically all the other mods, so it's easier to see what you need from every single item. So for example, like this one, if you get some crit multi on your suffixes, that's great. It's good for you. Attack speed is also pretty good. But if you don't get anything, that this is what it's going to look like. So I'm trying to cover the lower spaces. So I try to slim down the requirement as much as I can. So all of the item, this one is even just 2 mod. And this one is 4 mod, but this one you just reinforce defense until you get a good armor and you craft resistance. If you get another resistance from here, that's nice. It makes you easier to keep your resistance. But if you don't get them, this is what it's going to look like. So this is the most bare bone version of the build. So let's just do the maps and we can see how the build performs. This is a T16 rare with all the Voidstone, and we're just going to go through it and see how the build performs. And on day 1, we're still going to be doing physical damage. This is the weakest point, obviously, because we don't really have any gear or anything like that. And as you can see, the build is still pretty good, even on T16 with the item that are, pretty much garbage item. I think you can get a better item if you do like the proper campaign. But this is what the power looks like on day 1 with a very minimal gear. So let's go to the boss so we can see the single target. And by the way this setup works is you basically just using Cyclone and walking around, and every time you kill something, you will leave a corpses. And the general cry will basically summon this small guy, and they will cast whatever skill you put in them. And in my case, I put them with Ground Slam of Earthshaking. If you cannot find this one, usually it's pretty cheap, but just saying that if it's getting more expensive, then you can just use Thunder, which is the skill that we use on campaign. And on the single target, this is what the single target looks like. And for the single target, you want to put down corpses first, because the general cry needs some corpses. It's not consuming them, but it just need the corpse to be there. So you want to put on desecrate on the single target, so you can spawn all this guy. And the single target damage is not super amazing, but I think it's still a pretty good amount of single target for like a very minimal gear like this. And on the Ascendancy, I do not use any Ascendancy node, so this is basically without any Ascendancy. And just ignore the Wasabi, because before I'm using Wasabi for the Wild Bears, so I just assume that you don't get them on day 1. So there's no power from Ascendancies. So in 3.29, when we get the new Reliquarians, you will be more tanky and you will deal more DPS. And for the Ascendancy itself, the first node we're going to choose Dawnbreaker. This is really good for defense, especially the physical taken as fire. Physical damage is the scariest in the early game, so having that will help survivability by quite a lot. And for the second node, we're going to choose the Unmight. Basically, you're going to get 100% crit multi, which is pretty nice. On campaign, this is not going to affect you that much because we don't have that much crit yet, but once you go into maps, you have your point, you start making your stuff, you can cap your crit pretty easily with this setup. So the 100 crit multi is just a nice addition for damage. Another options we can go for is Cimarron. We also have power charges, but we are at the part of the tree where we don't really have a lot of access to power charges. We only have access to 1 power charges, so I decided not to go for Cimarron because of that, and I just assume that you cannot get any source of power charges on day 1. And for the third cluster, we're going to go for Calm Binding. This is going to convert 25% of the enemy physical damage to fire, and this is not exactly going to be 50% because this one is on the enemy while the Dawnbreaker is on you. So I think the calculation, if my math is correct, it's around like 43 or 44% conversions. And that's a good amount of conversions. And 50% strength going to give you some amount of damage and also some amount of life, which is still pretty nice. So that is the ascendancy we're going to go for, and this is what the passive is going to looks like. And this is a level 95 character, and because your ascendancy is going to give you 5 skill point, this character basically simulate level 90 characters. So you should be able to get all this node when you reach level 90. So this is elemental versions, and it's going to require some gear before you can swap to this. The first one, you need Hrim Sorrow. The second one, you need 2 Taming, and you're going to need your Suffering, and you're also going to need this cluster over here and over here, which is basically the cluster with Feet of Fury, Martyr Prowess, and Wake Advantage. And on this one, you will need the Fuel to Fight, Martyr Prowess, and Overlord. And the last pieces is Integration Jewel. This is the core of the build, and what this node do is basically going to make you cannot ignite, chill, or freeze, or shock, but instead you're going to do Scorch, Brittle, and Sap. And the reason why this is good, because Scorch lower the elemental resistance of the enemy, and Brittle going to give you base crit chance, and Sap going to reduce the amount of damage they deal. So in these versions, we are basically doing a pure elemental damage. And the reason why we can do that is because of Himsoro. Himsoro going to convert your physical damage 100% to cold damage. And one important detail about this version is you cannot use Hatred here, because you can drop the Herald of Us and Herald of Purity for Hatred, but if you do that, you cannot use Trinity. So just make sure that you follow the setup properly. In here, we need the Herald of Us so we can get some fire damage. And in order for Trinity to work, you need 2 elemental damage that overlap. So if you hover over this, you can see that the fire damage is 227 to 6,634, and the cold damage is 1,100 to like 33k. Even though they are not the same, but they have a range that overlap. So there will be a time where the cold damage is going to roll low. It's going to deal like 1,000 or 2,000 cold damage, and you will have like 6,000 fire damage. And that's how you can get your Trinity up with this setup. So make sure you have your Herald of Ash. And Skitterboard is just really nice for the setup because it brings back the chill and the shock. And Taming basically gives you increased elemental damage for each elemental type. So we have Scorch, we have Brittle, we have Sap, and now we have chill and shock too. So that is like 240% increased elemental damage. And the Yoga Suffering is the same thing. Enemy take 10% increased damage per each type of element. So because we have 5, the enemy going to take 50% increased damage, which is a lot of multiplier. And for the belt here, I'm using Rislata. This is not mandatory. You can also use something like Perseverance. This is going to give you almost permanent onslaught because you always fortify. And it also gives you some life and some armor and evasion. So this one is pretty good. And you can also use something like Headhunter if you get them early. Headhunter is still the best build for mapping. And for the general crash setup, I'm using Volcanic Fissure of Snaking because I like it. On paper, Titanium Slam of Cataclysm will deal more damage, but I like Volcanic Fissure, that's why I'm using Volcanic Fissure. So if you want more damage for single target, just use the Titanic Slam of Cataclysms. So let's do a map here so we can see how this performs. So the gameplay is basically the same. The difference is just skill and the weapon damage. So now because we are dealing elemental, and we also have Herald of Ash, and this basically makes the clears a lot better. And Volcanic Fissure, the reason why I like this skill because it just go all over the place, and it end up making the clear become really, really good. And the reason why you see the Sapphire, Ruby, and Topaz is because of Sacred Chalice. At this point of the at these versions of the build, we're going to use the Sacred Chalice. You can still use Unmight, that's fine, but Sacred Chalice give a lot of physical as extra elemental, and this setup really, really good with that kind of stats. So that's the reason why I'm using the Sacred Chalice. And as you can see, the damage is like way more, and it easily can take down this kind of content. The same with Guardian, Shaper, or Conqueror, or Editor. At this version of the build, you should be able to do them pretty well. It should be pretty easy to do them with this. So that's how this version performs. And if there's one thing that I want to change from this setup, it's probably the boots. And this one, because I only have the movement speed, we can get the movement speed with Onslaught. Onslaught will still help you move around faster, and it also gives you a little bit more DPS. So if you can get Onslaught on your boots, that will be better. So now we're going to look at the POP of the high budgets. And the reason why I show you this is because I don't have the character anymore. This is my character on 3.28, and I adjusted for the new Reliquarian set. So the damage is not super high, 60 million. 60 million is good enough for you to do like the juice content and all that stuff. And this is probably the furthest I will take this build. And after this, you can go for something like strength stacking. But there is a few things that I want to try on this league, so I think I will skip on the high budget. But I will still include this just in case some of you want to take this into the high budget. This is what it's going to look like. You have more DPS, you have more tankiness and all that stuff. And this is basically just a min-max versions of the elemental versions, because the core of the build is still the same. You just try to get like this thread of hope here is going to allow you to take a bunch of this node, and also like leader pride here. You want double damage. This one I have two of them double damage here, and one of this is life. And then bunch of tattoo here. So this tattoo is the Warcry cooldown tattoo. And this Warcry cooldown tattoo going to make the general cry a lot better. It's going to trigger a lot more often. And that's the reason why you see the DPS of the volcanic staking is now above the Cyclone. And also for the gear, like I have this kind of stuff. This is pretty endgame stuff with crit chance and crit multi, because the way you make this is by using Recombinator, so you're going to need a lot of bases. And for the helmet, I'm using Abyssus. This item is going to give you a lot of crit multi, because we are converting a big chunk of the physical damage into elemental. And yeah, the gear is just like the better versions of the gear. Like this one have the temple mod, and then this one is still the same shock boots. You also want the onslaught on the movement speed if you can get them. And we're still using Yoga Suffering, Taming, and Headhunter. I prefer to use Headhunter because I mostly do mapping. And the Tincture, just Tincture with elemental damage and also penetrations, because we are dealing all elemental damage. And also with something like Balance of Terrors. And also with something like Balance of Terror, it's going to give you 40% physical damage as random element. But you need to cast elemental weakness every 10 seconds, which is, for me personally, it's not that big of a deal. And also the Watcher Eye, this is how we convert all our physical, because we're no longer using Crimson Sorrow. So the glove itself going to convert some of the damage into fire, and Watcher of Eye going to convert the rest 40% into cold damage. And it also gives you crit multi when you're fighting by precisions. We are using precisions. And the Purity of Fire one, this is the mod that you want if you want to use the damage taken conversions, because we can do that with the Temper of War. You just need to make sure that your Leader Pride is under Rakyata. I believe I have them on the mid budget. This is Tempered by War. This is going to convert the 50% cold and lightning damage to fire. And we have Dawnbreaker converting 25%. And we have the Watcher Eye converting 20%. So yeah, that's basically the high budget versions. So I think that's it about the setup. And as usual, if you guys have any questions, just leave it in the comment below. And I also working on the Spellcaster setup. But since I rarely play Caster as a League Start, I still haven't found a good setup. So if you guys have any suggestions, just leave a comment below. But if I can make it in time, I will make another video about that one. But for now, this is a safe League Start. I already tried. It works well. And I have all the resources that you can use for the guide and all that stuff. So thank you everyone for watching. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you on the next one.